Hello and welcome to the Commerce Crew Unofficial Podcast. Today is an interesting day. We are rebooting this podcast, historically known as the Unofficial SFCC Podcast, or sometimes just SFCC Unofficial or just Unofficial. We've gone through a little bit of a transition in leadership of this podcast, and it's been dormant for a little while. But today, Kyle and I are here to reboot the podcast and talk a little bit about some recent events.
Hey, Steve. This is Kyle. I'm very excited that we're rebooting this. I'm very excited to be joining you on this journey. Been a fan of the podcast in the past. I think both you and I were guests on this podcast. Now, we're excited to introduce new people, new thought leadership, variety of different guests we have planned. It's really exciting because commerce is changing and there's just a ton to talk about broadly across e-commerce and including in Salesforce Commerce Cloud across both B2C and B2B. A ton to get to and ton to talk about. So excited to be joining you. Thank you.
Right. And it's not just commerce. Right now, we're probably going to talk about some Agentforce, AI, various kind of tangential topics, but we'll get more to that later. What do you think is the first thing we should do for our guests and listeners, Kyle?
I think we should talk about Unofficial SFCC and why we're here talking to them.
Yeah.
I think your story especially, which you've told on this podcast and the official Commerce Innovators podcast by Salesforce Commerce Cloud, you've told that story and it's a great story of the founding of Unofficial SFCC. Maybe, Steve, you want to give a 1 to 2 minute version of that right here, and then also what you do outside of that volunteer work, which of course is your main 9 to 5 job.
Good call. And I think there's probably some of my guest session on this podcast that has not yet aired as of the date of this recording, but probably will follow it in the near future. So yeah, I've been in the e-commerce space since 2006, some of that time off of the Commerce Cloud platform, but many of you already know that was at one point called Demandware. I started working on Demandware in 2011, found that there was a lack of collaborative Q&A stuff. There was a forum, but it was clunky and slow. And I was used to more real-time interaction with other practitioners through things like IRC. And before that, maybe like Yahoo Chat or, vice versa. The IRC probably came first. But, long story short, I and somebody from Demandware at the time on the Site Genesis team were kind of commiserating about this at a bar one night. And I suggested that we start a Slack community or an IRC channel. Basically, next day, there was one, and it was built under the Demandware ownership and specifically under the Site Genesis team under Larry Gelberg. But the other co-founder, who I consider the co-founder, who's really probably the founder, given he created it, is Tree Win. And Tree doesn't work in the ecosystem anymore, but is still kind of in technology overall. Is very impressed with how we've grown since then. We are now over 12,000 members. It is the second iteration of this Slack community, the first of which died, I think, in 2016, basically at Connections that year.
Right.
And thank you to Matt Rose, who restarted the community while I was at the conference. I think you were probably at the conference.
Yep.
A lot of other people were too. And we carry on the legacy of everybody who has contributed in some way, shape, or form of this community.
It is a great community, and thank you for starting it. Thank you for your years of doing it. I was honored. I'm not sure about this, but I was one of the first 4 or 5 admins. I might have been the first non-founder, raised my hand and said, I want to help with this.
Yeah, you definitely threw in, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody else does too, all of the effort that you've put in since then. And
it's a pleasure. It really is. It's not as much work as it probably should be. There's room to grow and operate it even more efficiently. But we do, I think all of us spend some weeks when we're busy, 15 minutes on it. But some weeks we spend a couple of hours being admins of this. And now we have an admin team of over 10, I believe. It's definitely a team effort to make the community work, to keep it going, to make sure communications are following the terms of service, getting channel suggestions, dealing with complaints. When you have 12,000 people, even if only 3,000 of them or 1,500 of them are active any given week, people have complaints, might be a strong word. People have suggestions. So we gotta act on those.
Yeah, as you pointed out, we all have day jobs. Mine is being a technical director and chief architect at Deft Agency, until somewhat recently. And this is where we work together, Astound Commerce. You were a technical director there, or perhaps were you VP?
Yeah, I was VP, but it was whatever, whatever the title was. I was also serving, that role of being a leader among technologists with a lot of peers, a lot of people I consider just as smart and competent in terms of finding solutions for our clients. I was honored to be there for a long time. I recently left Astound and left consultancy to form my own startup in the commerce space. So I formed a startup called Generous, which is an agentic commerce gifting app. We're pre-launch, we're pre-revenue, we're very early days, but it's fun to be building something new that, and all my hopes and dreams and ambitions, I hope changes the world. And I hope a few years from now, when you listener and you, Steve, are thinking about giving somebody a gift, instead of thinking Amazon, like out of the box, or like off the top of your head, I should say, you think of Generous maybe. That's the ambition. So changing the way and making gifting easier for people is the mission of our startup, and that's exciting.
Speaking of gifts and new things, we have received the gift of a bunch of time from the Salesforce Trailblazer marketing team in the form of some, investment in the Slack community.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's a gift. But what are some of the new things that people can expect in the community in the next few weeks?
Well, by the time they're listening to this, maybe we will have already rebranded or be in the process of rebranding. So people might on LinkedIn have already seen things like the term Commerce Crew and Unofficial SFCC used interchangeably. That's because, soon we think we will be rebrand to being Commerce Crew, an Unofficial SFCC community. That's exciting. It gives us a little bit more Salesforce heft and love and power behind it while we're still maintaining operational independence. I think, Steve, you are the Slack workspace owner and you will continue to be. And therefore, as long as that's the case, when the rubber meets the road, we'll still be unofficial. Until Salesforce owns the Slack group, it's an unofficial one while you do, or while somebody not officially affiliated with Salesforce owns it. So that's great, but the marketing team is giving us their time. They're suggesting improvements to improve the day-to-day life, we think, of a Slack user there in terms of getting answers. We have some ideas on the roadmap that we're working on, including like a Q&A form. Instead of just asking a general question in our general channel, maybe there's a Q&A form that has some intelligence behind it. Somebody has asked this question before. We're going to loop through our log of knowledge that is this Slack space and see if that's already been answered before you need to submit it. A little bit more social love too. We love our Hey Taco integration. Shout out to the Hey Taco team for donating us that license, since we are an educational and a nonprofit group.
I have a slight correction on that.
Yeah.
I think Oleg still pays for our license to Hey Taco, although it is offered, I think, with a lower rate than we might have otherwise achieved.
I think so. We can edit this out later if Oleg wants us to, but I think he just owes the CEO like a beer a year or something like that. I think that's what he wrote on Slack. It is not $2 per user or $1 per user, whatever their license is. That would be cost prohibitive for Oleg or anyone.
Indeed.
It's very generous of them.
It is very generous of them.
I didn't mean that pun. I got to be able to use the word generous without like, hey, I caught that. But yeah, love the community, love the interaction, love giving tacos. I love being on the taco leaderboard as the most giving taco person. I need to do that more consistently though. I don't do that every month. Got to get more tacos.
Big same. I have been slacking on that. So I think another new thing in our life is we both visited Chicago very recently for Connections. And that's for anyone who hasn't heard of Connections. First of all, what rock are you living under? And secondly, that is Salesforce's marketing and commerce conference that happens kind of like 6 months away from Dreamforce, typically. Not quite 6 months, but pretty well offset almost evenly for the product development life cycle. And so there's some new stuff coming on the horizon. And I'd like to understand what you were excited about, what kind of like sparked your imagination while you were there.
I think this was roughly my 10th, outside of the COVID years, of course, but like 10th in a row-ish, right, of this conference. It used to be called Demandware Exchange, and then it merged with Marketing Cloud when Demandware was acquired and became Salesforce Connections, the Marketing and Commerce Conference. What stuck out to me was the juxtaposition of Commerce Cloud this year as opposed to years past, in that a lot of content, a lot of the keynote in the years past was Commerce on Core. Turn on commerce with the click of a button. Look at this, Sales Cloud customer. You can turn on commerce quickly, which is awesome. And that's still there. But that wasn't the lead message in this year's conference. I think this can be attributed to change in leadership on the Commerce Cloud team. But the message was B2C first. It was B2C commerce is our flagship product. B2C commerce is a great consumer product for commerce. You can do B2B use cases on it. I mean, recently in the Commerce Innovators podcast, Caleb Bryant was interviewing one of my former clients, James Pope from Interface Floor, and he was talking about how the B2C commerce platform can support all of our B2B use cases, and we're doing B2B commerce on that platform. So that embracing of the platform formerly known as Demandware, for me and for you and for the majority of our community are kind of the Demandware professionals. That was refreshing. That was refreshing not to be the second leg or whatever that expression is, third leg on of this. I will say that still Connections was Marketing Cloud first before that, but when you got into the Commerce Cloud part of it, it was more B2C, and that was exciting. And that's a big focal point, doubling the investment of B2C commerce this year. That was my main takeaway. What about yours?
Yeah, I'm unclear on whether the commerce double down is across all Commerce Cloud, right? So that would include OMS and PIM and as well as B2B, or if it was primarily on the B2C product. Either way, we know investment is doubling down across commerce in Salesforce, and that is exciting. And I think, as you said, it was kind of validating for me, obviously, starting in 2011 all the way till now, 2025. I have clearly built my career on this platform, and hearing, what we all kind of knew already, that it's a solid platform that can stand up to basically any holiday loads that you might experience. It just, helps me feel a little bit better about where my career might be going and where this platform might be going, which naturally has some impacts on the community overall. And I love the community and I support it out of love. So, I want it to grow. I want it to continue. And so I'm hopeful for the future for all of us. Outside of that by itself, I'm looking forward to some potential developments, and we don't know what the roadmap's going to be between now and October with this increased investment ramping up very quickly right now. But my hope is that we'll land somewhere closer to kind of like the parity across the industry as far as developer experience goes. And it might end up waiting until early next year to land, but I'd like to see more investment in some, agentic coding support, MCP servers, those sorts of things to, allow developers to kind of 10x themselves with the aid of agentic, IDEs like Cursor or, Copilot or something like that. So my hope is that we'll see some of that stuff soon, and it'll lead to kind of a renaissance of productivity within the ecosystem. On top of that, there's a lot of, I think you mentioned Marketing Cloud, but underneath of that, and I think underneath of Agentforce is Data Cloud. And so the increased capacity of zero copy capabilities within Data Cloud to allow more connectivity with less effort, and therefore ultimately kind of enhance what Agentforce can do, enhance what Marketing Cloud can do, and ultimately the personalization that can be achieved through like the features that we've always used in Commerce Cloud, like slots and targeting and things like that within Page Designer, and promotions and eligibility and all of those sorts of things. I think there's a lot of opportunity on the horizon to really achieve more closely what customers have been trying to achieve on the platform for quite some time.
I think so too. And while Salesforce is getting its act together in both of those areas, DevOps part of it and the merch ops part of it, there are startups from people we know. I'm not the only one going out there and founding a company right now to round out some agentic commerce capabilities, and it's exciting. We should invite some of them onto our podcast. I think you and I have 3 or 4 people we could invite who are working on merch ops, DevOps kind of things with AI flavor to it that will certainly inspire Salesforce to provide some of that same value. The edge that startups have is that they can move faster. So we can introduce some of our listeners to some of these tools as well.
Yeah, I think we'll probably see an increase in activity probably from Salesforce Ventures maybe in the early next year. And likely in the direction of some of our friends and former colleagues in that area. And I agree, we should invite them on for a session.
Cool. But the conference was a success for you? 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb sideways? Like how is Connections?
Yeah, I would say
25.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for asking. I'd say it's probably one of those like 45-degree up type of thumbs. Oh, thanks, iOS or Mac OS. The thing for me at Connections is always kind of it's a family reunion for everybody in the space. So the networking was very good this year. I did walk away with a lead or two, so there's that, and that's good. I think, my biggest success here was that we as a commerce crew, I think, had a really good showing. And you'll see this sign behind me, which actually came home from Connections in my luggage. I actually had to break that part and fold it. And
I see. Yeah. I saw where you're pointing.
A little bit of a crease there, but don't worry about that. Fix it in post.
No one would have noticed if you hadn't pointed it out. That's always the way it works.
It's okay. But signs like that, these jackets, thank you, Salesforce, for providing these jackets. If you're listening to this on a podcast, the thing I pointed to was a sign that says Commerce Crew, which was used to kind of collect us all at the conference. And we're both wearing track jackets that are green that say Commerce Crew on the chest, which again, were provided by Salesforce. And that's been part of that renaissance of the Commerce Crew with the Trailblazer marketing team trying to kind of build recognition, visibility for this community within the ecosystem. And I think that that's been really strong in this particular event. How about you? Was it successful for you? You went as the founder of Generous, and your presumably motivations were a little different this time than they've historically been.
Yeah, we decided to announce and come out of stealth right before the conference and tied to the conference. And that went well. We had hundreds of signups following our announcement, which was great. Some of the social posts we put, including my LinkedIn post, went a little bit viral. Nothing like crazy TikTok viral, but when you hit 5 figures in impressions, it's nice. You get that over 10,000 views for some post. That's as high as I ever get on LinkedIn and stuff. So we were pretty happy with that. Pretty happy with announcing Generous and getting the word out, and got some interest from retailers, got some interest from angel investors. Those were my leads that I took away, and that's what I was hoping to get out of the conference. So in that regard, 2 thumbs up. The community part of it, absolutely. Overall, the conference content, I do want to know more about the Commerce Cloud roadmap. I want Commerce Cloud to get a little bit more love in the main keynote. It was hardly mentioned at all in the main keynote, which wasn't great. But it was funny, the commerce stories were weaved throughout. They give a demo of turning no reply emails into conversations, turn 2 trillion notifications into 2 trillion conversations. That's a compelling pitch. At the end of just about every one of those demos, the customer, John Doe, is ready to purchase, of course, because, in demos, they're always ready to purchase. And they just say it. And the agent says, great, your order's placed. That was the commerce part of it. So it was weaved throughout. It wasn't in this part, it's powered by Commerce Cloud explicitly, but it was definitely part of the story if you just, read between the lines.
Yeah.
If we are going to help Salesforce achieve that vision for customers, Commerce Cloud has a role to play, and agentic commerce is part of that. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to that keynote, I think one of the things we saw was the way that the conversation with the agent can kind of weave in and out of various experience points. And maybe the audience is left to understand that the page behind that conversation was perhaps powered by Commerce Cloud and being updated based on personalization features through a data cloud behind the scenes. That definitely was an impressive showing. I think there's a little bit of demo magic right now, but
for sure,
certainly the vision is a good one. And I think represents probably what a lot of merchants and merchandisers are trying to get to with the projects we kind of undertake every day.
Excuse me. And it will be interesting to see how these Salesforce products, they are well positioned when put together, especially with Data Cloud, to have that end-to-end vision realized. I don't know of another suite of products under one umbrella like Salesforce products that have that marketing and commerce interaction capability yet. So it's compelling. It is demo magic right now, but it's a very intriguing promise.
Agreed. What would you hope to see at Dreamforce, having come out of Connections, seeing what's brewing, assuming, let's imagine, even if you're not planning to go to Dreamforce, but you can answer if you are, what would you want to see there?
I'm tentatively going to Dreamforce. Nothing final yet. What I hope to see, whether it's there in person or whether it's on the Salesforce Plus platform, Salesforce Live platform, what's it called again? Salesforce Plus. I hope to see some Commerce Cloud news. And I think it was fair that we had to both on stage we heard it, and then in our own conversations with product leaders at Salesforce we heard it, that this decision to double the investment in B2C commerce is new. We're moving fast. We're activating this team quickly. We have some things that have been on a roadmap for a long time that we're working on right away. I was excited about an idea I had on the Idea Exchange for a long time, product readiness, that's coming. Those product readiness checks in Business Manager, clients have wanted that for years. It's on the roadmap, great. They're figuring that out now. I'm hoping that by September, when we're in Dreamforce time, that, they'll be ready to unveil a little bit more about their next year roadmap in terms of specific features. There was a little bit of lacking specificity. I'm hoping for some more Commerce Cloud specificity at Dreamforce.
I think that's a reasonable prediction and expectation. With the investments presumably nearing some sort of like product from that investment around that same time, I'd expect to see more clarity on what they plan to deliver in October generally, and more clarity, as you pointed out, in next year's roadmap with potentially improved investment across the board for commerce. I don't think we've talked about it yet, but there's also, I think, that interesting story of weaving PredictSpring or Salesforce POS into the kind of Commerce 360 story for how consumers interact with your brand. And with Nitin at the head of all of commerce, there might be some opportunities to kind of just really kind of bring it all together into one platform a little bit more cohesively. What are your thoughts on that?
I was a fan of the PredictSpring product, and I was a fan of Nitin. He was a contact of mine before his company was acquired by Salesforce. We had some mutual prospects and clients and got to know him and got to be impressed by him as both the business head of a company, but also a sharp technologist. Like, he could answer my technical questions as an architect trying to solution a problem pretty well, and then, delegate to the person who really knows when he needed to. Seemed very sharp. I was excited that he was effectively promoted to the head of commerce and retail. So he's the head of Commerce Cloud and Retail Cloud, and they're all under one umbrella under him when there was some departures at Salesforce, formerly in the head of commerce roles. So I think he has the potential to succeed in this, and I'm excited about the direction he's taking it. I think there are opportunities to interweave a lot of these products. When they originally talked about going to market with Retail Cloud and modern POS, they talked about like this is a full suite point of sale system. And, at first we heard things like maybe they're not going to go to market against a concierge solution. If there's an RFP for an in-store concierge solution, maybe they do more than that. Maybe they're not going to compete for that. Maybe somebody wants an endless aisle solution. Well, Retail Cloud does more than that. Maybe we're not going to compete for that. But I don't know if I'm reading in between the lines too heavily, and this is somewhat speculative on my part, but I sense some softening of that in the messaging that I saw at Connections, and I'm excited about that. Like, there are different applications of Retail Cloud that talk about the unified commerce experience, right? No matter how I want to interact with your brand, I want a consistent customer experience. I want you to know me. I want you to know my preferences. When I'm talking to an in-store associate, an in-store agent on a tablet, your website catalog, or your website agent, I want personalized experience. And these solutions, when stitched together properly by an agency such as Dept or by an agency such as Astound Digital, with whom we both worked before, and others, you get that help. You can provide that unified commerce experience. And now agentic is part of that experience.
Yeah, I love that there's less of like the all or nothing kind of approach to proliferating the clouds. But on the subject of kind of the all or nothing idea, what are your thoughts on the bundles that were announced at the commerce keynote with, Commerce Cloud, Retail Cloud, order management, and, some marketing cloud in there?
I think that's exciting especially for customers who already have more than one Salesforce product. And when they're doing their renewals, it's going to be a compelling pitch for them. But that's a two-sided coin too. Not everybody is ready to replace their OMS or even augment their OMS with Salesforce Order Management, for example. Not everybody's ready to replace or augment their point of sale system with a modern point of sale system. It's just not on their roadmap now. If they're forced into that, I can see from a customer's perspective where that becomes shelfware, and that's not the best experience. So if they're forced into renewing that way, that might cause some friction. If it will remain where there are a la carte options, maybe it's better, but we'll see. We'll see how it comes when it actually comes to customers and their AEs having those discussions.
Yeah, it seemed to me like it was more positioned as like, if you're joining the Commerce Cloud community from a customer perspective this year, these are bundles offered to you, right? But even so, in those systems, in those circumstances, it's possible that you have some incumbent solution that you weren't planning on replacing that would be part of that bundle. So that's a perfectly valid concern. And I have seen it happen all too many times with clients of mine where, they get a great solution kind of half integrated or don't touch it at all, and then complain that it's not delivering value, which, it's partly on you. So yeah, Cool. That's investment for us potentially. We can capture that revenue to help you get the most out of that solution. And often that's the better solution than replacing what you already have. But certainly as a buyer looking at those bundles, think about how you're going to use those solutions, or at least roadmap the use of those solutions so that you can get the most out of that. Looking a little bit further into the future, what can listeners and potentially watchers of the podcast expect from the two of us and our plans for the future?
We haven't even brainstormed that sufficiently, so let's just live brainstorm it now.
I love it. Yeah, let's do it live.
Some of the podcasts I enjoy, they do have like a recurring segment. And one idea I have with you, Steve, I haven't even brought this up to you yet. So this is a live reaction, unscripted. Here's an idea I have. You and I each share like problem of the week. We have to anonymize it. We don't want to talk about our customers, but like what problem are you working on this week? And it could be anything. It could be related to Salesforce Commerce Cloud. It could be technology in general. Like my problem of the week this week is really interesting. We announced we're getting hundreds of signups, and I suspect that a percentage of these signups are bots. And I don't want to put up a reCAPTCHA if I can avoid it. But just before recording this podcast, I did, after trying several other mitigations, including what's called a honeypot, which is like an empty form field that the bots will fill out, but humans won't. That didn't slow it down. Turned on Cloudflare free version with basic bot defense. That didn't slow it down. Turned on the reCAPTCHA an hour ago, and hey, the signups have slowed down. Darn it, they were bots. So that was my problem of the week, and maybe that's something you and I can talk about each week.
That is a recurring nightmare of mine, actually. Yeah. A lot of times we go into these like conversion rate optimization projects and discover, oh, well, actually, this is just bad data now. Yeah. Like you're basing your decision off of the idea that people aren't converting, but the reality is 40% of that data is not people. So I can sympathize greatly with that problem. I've run into it many times, and I'd say that, yeah, so security, bot protection, privacy protection are all things that fall within the purview of anybody running a website these days, but most specifically, anybody who's doing a transactional system is likely to be burdened with those problems. My problem for this week, since I'll just jump into it, is mostly that I'm out of office next week and there's so much to do.
We can all sympathize with that one too.
Yeah. But I think from like stepping back further, the problem that probably every SI is facing right now is price pressure, and in particular price pressure from the idea that we should be able to accelerate development a lot further than I think most of us have already done.
Because of AI?
Because of AI in particular, yeah. And there's still some hesitancy across different parts of SIs, and a lot of SIs are embracing AI, but, Dept in particular has been a little more cautious. We've used AI for a long time. We understand it very deeply. We don't want to put customer data and customer systems into just any model, right? So we're very selective about how we're adopting it and when and where. So my bigger problem right now is safely applying AI to our development processes to remain competitive in the market and also open up new opportunities for us as well.
I'm sure that is a topic a lot of our listeners will want to learn more about. Maybe we can interview you or one of your colleagues who might be working with you on that project to talk more about how Dept is innovating your development on Commerce Cloud with AI. That's fascinating stuff.
But I think that topic is a great point to touch on about what people can expect. Visitors to the podcast, interviews. In general, it's going to be things that we think would be interesting to other community members, but we are open to your feedback. I think right now the appropriate way to get that to us is through the Slack community. There's a podcast channel there, and Kyle and I both monitor that. I will add into the visual of this and the description of this episode a link to join the Commerce Crew Slack community, which will probably be a staple of every future episode.
Yeah.
But one of the things we did unveil at Connections kind of more publicly than it had been prior to that was a QR code slide in Dex, which you might see pictures of on LinkedIn. You're welcome to use that QR code to log into the community if you haven't already. And that Commerce Crew kind of identity within the Slack community in general. So what you can expect from this podcast going forward is guests approximately every other week. And ideally, those are people spread across the community, from business creators, founders, technologists, marketers, operations people, you name it. We want to talk to you. And if you have ideas or a desire to come on the podcast, again, check out that podcast channel in the Salesforce Unofficial Community Commerce Crew Slack, where Kyle and I both keep an eye to take that input and feedback and factor it into what we do.
Absolutely. If you're listening, you probably have a story to tell in the Commerce Crew, in the Commerce Cloud space. We would love to hear your ideas.
And no story is too small. I think we've got perspectives across the gamut that should be heard and shared. How would you like to close this out, Kyle? I think this is our first time signing off, and we should make it good, right?
Pressure. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to continuing this podcast, to relaunching it, and to keeping the momentum going. It seems like the future of B2C commerce and the Commerce Crew is looking brighter, and we're excited to be part of that.
Ta-ta for now, Commerce Crew. See you next time.